I'm just doing this to let you guys know that I made this video to try and present how I fixed this LED light. I'm sure other people out there are having a similar problem, and I hope this video helps you guys out. I may try to do some voiceovers in spots. I didn't do well on the recording on the video because I was more concerned about what the heck I was doing than where the camera was pointing. So um, I hope I hope this still works for you. I'll maybe edit out some of that stuff that I'm not talking or camera's not pointing in the right direction too well. So um, thanks for watching Shroudman Shop. This is an 8-foot LED light. And I do love these lights. They make amazing brightness. I like it bright in the workshop. And it's decided to become intermittent. And I found that if I just tap it, it'll come on. So, having 50 years of electronic experience, I thought I would see if I could repair it before I replace it. Now, I thought perhaps this would just slide out, but I see I am badly mistaken. Oh, there's a little metal clip in there. Ah, ground. So this is the ground lead, the bottom one. And it's just a finger contact. That just rubs on the aluminum here. So what? Oh God, this is just a marret in here. Butt connector, butt splice. And this is the electrical lead that runs from one end to the other, because they are meant to be able to daisy chain. So I guess I'm not going to get this out of here. Just give a tug on these first, make sure they're not loose. And they're okay. And that's just a jumper. Oh, I see. That's probably VCC from one lead string to the next. Right here, it looks to me like a cold solder joint, because you can see a small gap in the joint. But we'll continue. And we are going to have to part these wires. They don't appear to be polarized, but we'll mark them anyway. Well, maybe they are polarized. I'll mark them anyhow. This one has a black stripe. That seems to be fairly common these days. And we'll just see if we can make it a little more pronounced. We'll do the same thing on the other side of the butt splice. Good. I don't think I have any of these little butt splices in stock, but I do have this soldering iron and some heat shrink, and that's good enough. Good. You guys can go bye-bye. Now, after 50 years of soldering and a military specification soldering course, one thing that I can tell you, if you don't know much about soldering, or even if you think you do, is always keep that soldering tip clean. And some nice fresh solder on it. And it's always been my attitude that if you're going to make a solder connection, you should throw away twice as much solder as you actually use, in an effort to keep that soldering iron clean. The point being that if there's nice fresh solder on there, you'll get a more efficient heat transfer between the soldering iron and what you're trying to work on. Now we're going to have to open this thing back up. Maybe I can just slide that off now. Try not to touch those leads. You don't want to get finger gook on them. This lead right here, the white one, has got to come off, because this 3-wire conductor has to basically get pulled that way. Now, we should be able to, you see how gucky looking that solder? Well, you can't see anything. Maybe I gotta pull this back a little bit. There we are. That has got incredibly crummy looking just from sitting here a few minutes. So we'll brighten that solder up a little bit. Good. See the nice heat transfer you get with nice clean solder on there. And you don't want to keep your soldering iron set much higher than you absolutely need to. That's just asking for trouble. Now, here is string. Here's a nice string holder right here. My recently installed outfeed table vise. So what we want to do is just tie a little knot in here. That is not a slip knot. That or this string doesn't lend itself well to a slip knot. That's better. Operator error. Right, Billy? We've seen it a million times. Before that's gonna get extracted. Yeah. I got one to take off down here. This was an old solder wick roll. I like to keep the solder on there because it's a lot easier to use than the big roll. Yeah, we got this hot glued in here, but I don't think they did that good a job of it. No, it's potting compound. Another thing you can always look for is these caps, capacitors. You look on the end, there's a cross mark, a cut, partial cut. And if these things are starting to bulge out on the end, that cap is bad, or it's getting ready to go bad, because they call it swelling, and it's something that's fairly common to see. But I don't see any evidence of that here. There are 4 of these caps. They're in pairs. And I'm just looking for any signs of cold solder joints. Solder joints that are not nice and bright. I mean, a lot of these don't look like that, but a lot of times that is just the resin, the flux that they used to solder these things on. I'm going to resolder this black lead on here. I want a little more slack on this. Tug. Good. That actually pulled the LED strip along a little piece, so it's got a good hold on there. Okay. Oh, before I do this, let me have a look at these. Okay, those are good. Now, I also want to have a look at this. I think they're okay. But now let's have a look at these middle joints. This is the one that was bugging me the most. I mean, it looks parted. I still don't trust it. I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. I mean, all these things that I've done here may be in vain, because if there's a component with a bad wire bond inside it, well, that looks much better. You can see now it's nice and bright. It's shiny, that solder. And that is what you're looking for. Good. So let's spin this thing around and solder the other end back together. Give these a little tug. Good. Okay, well, just brighten that up a bit. It didn't work so good. Give you a little tug. That's good. Now, we'll see what we can do about reattaching these two wires. There we are. Now one more. There. You want to be careful not to cut too deep, because in these stranded wires you can end up cutting some of the strands off, and if you do that, you're losing your capability of carrying current. Now, one thing I learned over the hard way, over 100 times of learning by rote, is you should put the heat shrink on before you make your solder joint. It saves you having to unsolder and do it again. All right. if you're careful and you've got some nice fresh solder on there, both of those ends had been pre-tinned. If you just hold them together, touch your soldering iron on there, it'll take about 1 second for those to melt. Pull your soldering iron away and just hold them for a second while that solder resolidifies. You might have to take one for the team. Sometimes you'll burn your fingers a bit. But if you do it right and you get a clean solder joint, I've never seen these things come apart. I mean, and you go to school, they tell you, oh, you gotta twist them together. No, you don't. Solder makes a nice clean joint. It's very strong if you do it right. And sometimes your fingers are just too fat to do it right. Just that easy. The tug, they're good. Now I slide the heat shrink. Slide that over. You want to leave that cool for a second, or what you'll find is your heat shrink shrinks from the heat of the solder joint. Now, I have a heat gun, but with a simple little thing like this, I've often found that just touching it with the barrel of the soldering iron is more than enough to shrink it all you want. So I think that's good. I think that's all I can do. So now, let's see if we can have a quick test. I guess I better leave the soldering iron plugged in just in case. Well, it's bright. There's one other thing I thought I should add to today's soldering lesson. When you are done with your soldering iron, my recommendation, and what I've found from so many times of doing it over the years, turn the soldering station off. Wipe the old solder off the solder tip. It's nice and clean, and it's still hot enough to take a little bit of fresh solder. When you go back to use this the next time, it's going to be ready to go for you. And if you keep it like that, there's no reason you should ever have to change the soldering iron tip, unless you bust it or you want a different shape or size. So I guess I was a little bit out of frame there, but to do this, see, that's still taking a little bit of solder. It'll be nice and fresh solder on there, and you won't have to try to clean it and re-tin it. So that's the Schroedman Shop soldering system. just turned this little beast off here just a minute ago. And it's been sitting here running for about 4 hours. And previously I wouldn't get more than maybe 15 minutes out of it. And even less when it warmed up a little bit. But I think, well, I hope I got it fixed. I'm about to jinx myself by even saying that. And right there is really all I did to it was brighten up this solder joint right here. I think I tried to show you this earlier, but right there, that one solder joint, it was kind of dark looking, but it almost looked like it had a crack in the center of it. And I tried to open it up with the tweaker, but I didn't want to push too hard, because sometimes you can actually pull the solder trace right off the board, and I didn't want to go there, because that's a lot harder to fix than just a solder joint. So tomorrow morning we'll put it back up where it belongs and see how it does. I mean, it's nice and warm right now. It's certainly not hot, but all those LEDs, they're going to give off a little bit of heat. So we'll just let this sit here for the night and make him go back in his original spot in the morning. Thanks for watching Schroedman's Shop. My name's Dave. And I was going to say it's a pleasure to bring you this type of video, but it really isn't. But I do get a kick out of fooling around with these things. I did, electronics for so long, and now it's nice to be able to go back to my roots a little bit. So again, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and share, and be safe.